Share with us some of the details of your career in colon and rectal surgery. And I wanted first to ask you how it came to be that you went into the specialty of colon and rectal surgery, and how it came to be in those days when there were so few women in surgery of any kind.
Well, actually, it began as I suspect most of us do, in wanting to be a general surgeon. And certainly when I began my training, it was the specialty still was somewhat in its infancy as far as being known. So the whole thing started when I was a junior medical student, and I did my surgical rotation at Cook County Hospital. I walked onto this huge ward of 90-some patients, and oddly enough, I felt like I had come home. And because I'd spent the previous rotations not liking anything, internal medicine and psychiatry, heaven help us all, So I walked onto the surgical floor, and it really, it was like, okay, this is where I belong. And so that was fairly early in my junior year. I spent the last 2 years in medical school looking for something I liked to do better or as well. Didn't find it, so I said, okay, I'm going to be a general surgeon. And I only applied to match with Cook County Hospital. And so that's where I did my general surgery. And I was introduced to colon and rectal surgery by Durand Smith, who was one of the original fathers of the specialty, if you will, when it was proctology. And he was on staff at Northwestern Hospital in Chicago, and he would come every, I believe it was Tuesday afternoon, to Cook County and spend the entire afternoon with the colon rectal surgery staff doing anal surgery. And he was a phenomenal technical surgeon, could describe what you were doing in a very clear way, and you really understood what you were doing. And he was one of the finest human beings who ever walked the planet. He was a gentleman, he was a scholar, I still remember sitting in the coffee shop at the end of one of those sessions, and I was prepared to beg him to take me on as a fellow. And we sort of met in the middle because I started to ask, and he said, I was hoping you would. So that was my introduction to colon rectal surgery.
Had there been formal criteria for programs developed?
Well, I'm not quite that old. Not quite. There was a formal structure. It was colon and rectal surgery. The society changed its name from the American Society of Proctology to the American Society of Colon and Rectal Surgeons, either in 73 or 74, or maybe 75, but there. And so there was a formal structure. There was definitely a major component was colon surgery, but at County we had this huge volume of anal cases that was a phenomenal learning experience. So the specialty had already morphed into not only just proctology, but colon surgery as well.
So who besides Durand Smith do you remember as your teachers in that year of fellowship?
Definitely Heron Debkarian. And ultimately, Dr. Smith retired, and Heron became the director of the program. But Heron had been my senior resident in general surgery, and then time moved on, and he became, he finished and became the chief of the colon rectal surgery program. And he was the chief when I did my training.
So when you finished your fellowship, how did you then find a practice situation?
Well, the first year, I spent full-time teaching at County. I was invited to do that. That was a good experience, but I missed my patients. We're talking about the early 70s, and if you were chief resident on a service, you had, in general surgery, up to 90 patients that you were managing with some help and supervision. Colon rectal surgery, we had a ward, and we had I think 20 or 30 patients. And I went from being very active to being the person standing on the sideline assisting. And I really missed having my own patients, and I wasn't going to take it away from the fellows because there was a system that was training them well. So I took back 20% of my time towards the end of that first year and started a private practice at Michael Reese Hospital in Chicago. And I was in the right time at the right place because I learned to do colonoscopy as a fellow. And when I walked into the front door of Michael Reese Hospital, I was the only person on staff who knew how to do colonoscopy. And for me, that was a great entree, not only to the the surgical community, but also certainly to the internists and the gastroenterologist even. And because prior to that, the patients were getting on an airplane with their x-rays and their polyps and going to New York. Shenya would take out their polyps, and then they would come back home. Half of them never knew what the pathology was, but so I sort of stopped that eastward migration and became known to the rest of the staff. In that process of transitioning into private practice from being full-time attending, Michael Weidenheimer came to Chicago, and he came to county and gave us was with us for an afternoon, and I was asked to drive him back to his hotel. Excuse me, and he knew I was about to finish, and he gave me perhaps certainly one of the very best pieces of advice. He said, consider yourself a specialist. Limit your activities to your specialty. And if you do that, others will come to look at you the same way. So in my private practice, I never did general surgery. I wouldn't even do appendectomies, even to the consternation of one of the radiologists who couldn't understand why I declined to do his. But
So in your practice, then you were in exclusively private practice from that point forward?
Well, I took back increasing amounts of my time as I got busier in my practice. And so I continued to be an attending on the colorectal training program at County for 8 or 10 years after I finished. And then I was on the volunteer staff after that. But as I got busier in my own practice, then it was just time-wise, it was not possible to do everything.
Did you do much with the ASCRS during the initial years of your practice in terms of committees and involving yourself in some of the work of the ASCRS?
Yeah, I actually, excuse me, was probably the first audiovisual committee. And back then, people would submit 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter film, and it would arrive in a canister, and I would get a projector and sequester myself in a room and pray that I would not burn up the film or tear it up while I was reviewing it. And then I would decide what got on the program and not. And then eventually the committee structure got expanded, and Barton Hexter was very instrumental in that, and we worked a lot together for that. But so that was one thing. The other was that I was named to council as a general member of council. And excuse me, one of the things that I feel happy about having instigated was that Barton Hexter and I both got chosen to be on council at the same time. And at that point, it was only a 2-year appointment. And it occurred to us that the first year you're in awe because you're in this room with all of these wonderful people that you read about, and you're learning how the organization functions. And then the second year, you're starting to be, I was going to say wise enough, but that's probably an overstatement. But you started to understand more about the functioning, what was important, how things could be moved forward, and then we were gone. So Bart and I proposed that the tenure be changed to 3 years, and I believe that it continues to be 3 years, because that third year you're now comfortable. You have some understanding, you have some experience, And so you can hopefully in that third year really make some meaningful contributions to what's transpiring with council.
So during this period in your life, you were working with the administration and medical staff issues at Michael Reese Hospital, and ultimately became president of the medical staff, as I remember.
Yes, I have found myself sort of like sometimes kicking and screaming, drawn into becoming an activist for things. And that happened during my tenure as a house officer at county, because I ended up being president of the medical staff at a tumultuous time. And then when I went to Michael Reese, after about the first 8-10 years, things started to change radically for that institution, and ultimately it was sold to a private company. And so I found myself drawn into that activity as well, and was president of the medical staff there during the transition from when it was actually a not-for-profit hospital and sold to a for-profit company. And so that was exciting as well. And then the chief of surgery position was vacated, and they asked if I would be acting chief of surgery until they did a search. And I did that for 2 years as well.
Good. So how many years did you practice before your decision to retire?
25. And the word retire is a misnomer, and I always have to chuckle when people say, well, how's your retirement? I don't know, I'm not retired yet. Because when I quit my practice in January of 1998, I immediately became the founding person and instigator of the Stop Colon Rectal Cancer Foundation, which was a not-for-profit educational foundation to bring into the paradigm, into the consciousness of the country, the fact that colon rectal cancer is a preventable disease. And the first paper had come out in 1993. That was the first, that cooperative paper where a bunch of people had taken this fairly new instrument called a colonoscope and gone out and taken polyps out of all these people, and then they followed them and they found that the incidence of colon cancer went way down. And so they put the pieces together and said, if you get screened, you find polyps, you take them out, you don't get the cancer. Except that very few people knew that. And that included the medical community. I mean, this was brand new knowledge. And so that it needed to be disseminated and put into action was one factor that had me stop my practice and start the foundation. The other factor was that my only brother died when he was 55 from colon cancer. And there's no family history or anything like that. And he died in 1992, so he died a year before that paper came out. And as more and more evidence built up that this really was true, and yes, you can prevent colon cancer if you do what you're supposed to do, it became clear to me that I needed to do something about it. And that was why I quit my practice, because I loved what I was doing. I loved the tactical part of surgery. I loved the teaching of surgery. The patients, the interactions. I mean, it was for me a phenomenal gift to have been allowed to be a colon rectal surgeon. I mean, that's how I look at it. And so for me to put that aside, it was the absolute knowledge that thousands of lives could be saved, and that no one else needed to lose their brother or their husband or their father or certainly their son to colon cancer. And I could do something about it. Because if I put aside everything else, I could focus my attention on that. And that was the motivation for my starting the foundation and quitting my practice.
So, as part of that, you had a prominent patient in the Chicago police force, and can you tell us about how that morphed into a huge project which has never been repeated in the history of mankind, so far as I know?
The person you're referring to is the chief of police for the city of Chicago, and he was a young man in his 40s who had a colon cancer. And he was my patient. And this was like maybe 4 years before I retired. So after I started the foundation, I was looking for ways to disseminate the information. And it occurred to me that if we could get a program presented to the Chicago Police Department, that could perhaps be a format for other ways to disseminate the information through that respected body. And so we did that and created a video that actually was copied and distributed to 200 police departments across the country. And it was a series of interviews with members of the Chicago Police Department and the chief, of course, and myself, presenting the information and also making it a very personal thing, because the cops talking to cops. I mean, they're a unique breed, and they listen to each other. Yes, he said, whatever you want, it's a great idea, we'll do it. And then he took the video, and see, it wasn't just a video. It was a video, it was a letter from him, and also the foundation had created a brochure, an informational brochure. So it was a letter from the chief, it was a video that was presented to the entire department during their briefing sessions. The letters and the brochure were sent home, and the mechanism was in place for them to get their screenings and their testings. And then the chief took the package, and I got to go to Idaho for it too. Took it to the National Police Chiefs Organization, and they presented it to their individual departments. Yeah, it took about 2 years to make that happen. The other thing that was very useful for getting the message out was the brochure that we created, and probably in the 10 or 11 years that the foundation was active, I think we distributed over 500,000 brochures. Another wonderful thing that happened was that Angelita Habergamer from Sao Paulo invited me to come down, and between her efforts and my somewhat meager input probably, the entire country of Brazil now has efforts directed towards colon cancer prevention.
And evidently that's been very successful in that more and more people in the United States are getting screened annually to prevent colon cancer.
And there are numbers to support what you just said, because the incidence is going down and the numbers of people dying is going down. And I mean, to be able to know that I had a part in that, and you know, I created this wonderful board, and you were gracious enough to be on the board, and we can all feel very happy about that. We did something good, and the benefits will continue to go on forever. Actually, I mean, it really will. One of the serendipitous things that happened was that when I started the foundation, I became a member of the National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable, which was a group put together by the American Cancer Society and the CDC. And so that gave the foundation and our activities a national presence and an avenue of input into the fact that everybody was waking up finally saying, hey, this is something we need to do.
So among your other legacies is an endowed lectureship at the American Society of Colorectal Surgeons. Can you tell us about that?
Well, that was something that Ira Kodner created. it has now been in place, I think, about 10 years. The society could have done a variety of things with me, but I don't think anything could have been done that would have made me happier.
And the focus of your endowed lectureship is a particular topic, anorectal surgery rather than colon surgery. And I believe that the thought you had at the time was that you wanted to re-emphasize our roots and the fact that this is the area where we particularly have excelled historically.
A major focus of the lectures has been in the area of anorectal. And I feel very strongly that we need to, as a society, as we move forward with all of these new developments and new avenues of inquiry and subatomic whatevers, that we need to keep our focus on the fact that one of the things that makes us unique is that we know more about the anorectum and how to fix it than anyone else. And that is a unique contribution we can make, and it also sets us apart as a very highly specialized group of people. And with all of the new things, it's easy to get pulled along and dragged away from one of the basic parts of the contribution that we have made over all of the years we've existed as a society. And the American Proctologic Society, by the way, antedated the American College of Surgeons. So we've been around for a while, and we started out with proctology, and then as we developed and grew, it's now colon and rectal surgery. I really feel very strongly we need to continue to have a focus on anorectal, because we are the only people who really know that.
So in your career, what have you found outside of medicine that has given you pleasure and hobbies and recreational activities?
Well, before we traveled there, I'd like to say that there's one other thing that I was instrumental in bringing about change in the society, which I'm very happy about. And it has just expanded into this wonderful relationship between the Research Foundation and the society. There was a time in the past when, I suppose acrimony is a good word, and so a group of people were put together because I said a few things and you said a few things. So they put together a group of people to meet in Chicago to look at how we could stop the current lack of a relationship and to build a meaningful relationship between the two organizations. And I remember it was snowing like crazy, and we sat in a room in the Hilton Hotel in the center of O'Hare Airport, and we came up with some suggestions, out of which the present relationship, a commensal relationship, developed between the society and the Research Foundation. And so that is something that I'm also quite happy that we had something to do with. Travel has always been a passion of mine, and I have been fortunate enough to travel around the world and often in the company of wonderful friends. And photography is another one of my avocations, if you will, so the two fit together nicely. I also have been active in well, it's not really, I was going to say it's not recreation, but it is in a way, maintaining relationships with people over my life. I think that often, particularly as life goes faster and faster and faster, the human connections that give real depth and meaning to life can get lost. And so I have maintained that quite nicely. I love the creative act of writing. I've done a fair amount of that. And will eventually publish a book of photographs that I've taken from my front window of a little spot of beach on Lake Michigan. So.
And so in your retirement, which is a misnomer again, even now you are working, and currently you are still working in medicine.
Yes, yes. I decided that there was always a very narrow focus for the STOP Foundation. It was to put colon cancer prevention and screening out into the world and have it be part of the paradigm. And we were able to do that. So once that was accomplished, yes, there was a lot more work to do, and there still is work to do. But the foundation's specific narrow goal had been accomplished. And so I retired the foundation. That's something that's really retired. After about between 10 and 11 years. And then I am now working as a hospice doctor. And I find that fits my soul well.
So when all is said and done and you're no longer with us, what do you hope people will remember you for?
Oh my, now that's a hard one. That I cared, and that I loved life.